Welcome to A Slice of Sound, the podcast where we chat to some of our favourite musicians and producers. On this episode of the podcast, we're joined by Canadian producer Elaquent. My first taste of Elaquent's music dates back to 2013 when I came across his track Interference featuring singer Ali on SoundCloud. One of the most prolific producers in the scene, Elaquent has released over 20 albums since his debut project Self I Am in 2008, whilst also collaborating with the likes of Ivan Av, Odyssey, Iman Amari, and so many more talented people. First and foremost, thank you so much for joining me. It's an absolute privilege having you on. How's everything going? And how's the reception been to the new album?
And first off, it's an honor to be here. I mean, I appreciate the invite. Always nice to talk game with one of your peers, right? Things have been going good. The feedback on the album has been really good. Nice. And just trying to keep the momentum and sort of keep it in the mind's eye. I mean, I know that new Drake and an Andre 3000 album just came out today, so competition's fierce, but we're trying to play the long game.
Fighting for that top spot in Canada, first and foremost.
I can't outdo Drake, so we're really all competing for number 2.
So right, for the first part of the interview, I just wanted to take it all the way back to young Elaquent before you were making music. Can you remember what sort of music were you hearing growing up in your house? What sort of stuff was being played?
Just mostly hip hop and R&B, okay. And I know that's pretty cliche. So I have an older brother and an older sister. Nice. My older brother 10 years up on me, my sister 7, and so I'd be 6 years old, but I'm all I'm really hearing in the crib is EPMD and the Wu-Tang and nice. And Common and Eric Sermon and insert dope 90s hip hop group here. And then my sister was kind of more of the R&B influence. So,
sure.
I'd come home from school and my bedroom was right beside my sister's. So, stop in, see what she's doing or so forth. And, and you'd be hearing the Genuine and the SWV and,
nice.
And, and when you're young, you sort of just pick up on everything that, that your siblings are into. I mean, my dad, he used to have a pretty nice record collection. So I remember going to visit him when he was working abroad, and I'd be hearing Marvin Gaye and Al Green and so forth. Nice. Now, I never really put 2 and 2 together as far as, okay, well, one day I'm going to make a producer and I'm going to flip the sample. But, just a steady diet of hip hop and soul. And, the school I went to when I was a kid. I mean, it was mostly white kids, into rock. So, I'd be hearing all the rock and the metal shit when I'd go to school, and I'd come back to a steady diet of hip hop. So, I got a little bit of everything, but definitely the hip hop and R&B was first and foremost.
Nice. And whereabouts was it that you grew up in Canada? Sorry.
So I grew up in a city called Guelph. Don't worry, I don't expect you to know where that is, or anyone listening for that matter. But it's a small, dare I say, college town, about an hour and some change away from Toronto. So it's suburbia. So there wasn't, there weren't a ton of people who looked like me and listened to the same sort of things that I did. So, I was a little bit isolated. I mean, it wasn't really until much later where, you sort of meet more people who share more of your musical influences, so to speak.
Sure. Right. And were you at a young age, was there anyone in your house that was musical? Were you encouraged to play any instruments, or was your older brother or sister, were they interested in like making beats or anything? Like, where did that interest start?
So I think that, so I mean, beyond like growing up, as a kid, and my older brother would, since he was kind of the hip hop guy, I mean, he'd write raps, and he was actually really, really good at freestyling, like back when freestyling meant off the top of the head. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I took piano lessons as a kid. I mean, there's a big grand piano in the in the living room. So my sister did that, and she did a little bit of violin, and kind of monkey see, monkey do. So I begged my parents to do the piano lessons too, and but I mean, it was never sort of in the lens of, I want to learn how to play piano so that I can make beats one day. I just thought that it just looked like a cool thing to do. And, if I have any regrets, I should have gone all the way with it. But it's kind of one of those, if I knew then what I know now about myself and what I'm doing, I definitely would have gone way harder. But I will say that, it definitely played a role in wanting to eventually try to make my own stuff.
Sure. And at what point did you realize that you wanted to? Did you rap beforehand before making beats, or was there just a point where you just no?
No, I tried. I did.
Okay.
So before Elaquent the producer, there was Elaquent the rapper, and and so a big thing when I was in the 7th or 8th grade, the internet was a very new and interesting and a wild thing for all of us, and so my brother used to go on undergroundhiphop.com, RIP, and they would post new singles and news and all things hip hop, but there's a cool forum, and that was actually like my first foray into forums and chats and things like that. And people would basically type rhymes on it, and that was something that I got into, along with my brother, although I think I did it a little bit longer than he did. So it's like, okay, I'm sort of understanding how to put together a bar, but being able to actually rap it in front of a mic, in front of a crowd, is another animal altogether.
Right.
And so
sure.
He used to do a university radio show, and I would bug him and I'd harass him to let me go on and kick a 16 on air. Mind you, this show is going on at like midnight, 1 a.m. on a Sunday. So realistically, there's probably maximum 50 people listening to it. So I figure, okay, well, no one's really listening to it anyway. So come on, you can let me rap. I did, and it went awful. Like, I forgot my shit. I stumbled on my bars, yada yada. And then I remember after the movie 8 Mile came out, and battle rap, and I'd always been a fan of Scribble Jam and a lot of that stuff, but battle rap became very popular for a time after that movie, and and a friend of mine convinced me into going on stage to participate. Now, I somehow won one battle against a guy I know, before getting slaughtered by another guy who actually ended up kind of being my mentor in terms of making beats. So it was kind of a fun little full circle thing. But I definitely had dreams and aspirations to rap. I'm very self-conscious about my voice, and I just thought that I just didn't really have that conviction, and and really writing raps and putting together full verses was hard for me.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people I know who rap, hell, half of these motherfuckers don't even like write raps anymore. They just walk into the booth and they can kill it. And it would take me a lot of time to put things together, and that's sort of when I realized that as much as I love rap, I don't think that's the medium for me.
Right.
In general, like if you know me as a person, I've always been more of a behind the scenes kind of guy anyway. And that's sort of when I was like, okay, well, I've always sort of gravitated more towards production anyway. I definitely can't afford, when you're in elementary school, like I can't afford an MPC. Like my mom's not going to buy me one. Let me go on Google or Yahoo and figure out, say, maybe I can do it on a computer if such a thing exists. And that eventually led me to discovering Fruity Loops, and the rest, they say, is history.
Yeah. So then, are you still on Fruity Loops now?
To this day,
yeah.
Albeit not like version 2 that I was using back then.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I've got I use a bunch of different softwares and DAWs, and I've got some hardware and MIDI controllers and so forth, but
sure.
It's really been, but Fruity Loops has really been the core of my production since day one, and 20 plus years later, I'm still stuck on it.
Nice. And are you mainly, like you said, you've got some out hardware? Are you mainly still like in the box, or what other piece of hardware are you using like more often now?
So I have a Machine Plus,
okay.
And yeah, I mean, I've got a few different MIDI keyboards. Like there's a Novation joint just right over to the side of me. I don't think you can see that.
Sure.
And then I have an iPad with a grip of cool production apps. I got an SP404 Mark II. So I guess the decision to use one versus the other ultimately just comes down to just wherever I'm at physically, and just sort of the mood I'm in. So the Machine Plus is cool since it can operate as a standalone machine. Because I've got, like with Fruity Loops, I've got it loaded up on the laptop, and I've got all these cables and everything plugged in. But if I'm just sitting on the couch and I just don't feel like unplugging and moving my setup 20 feet over, it's kind of neat to just pick up the Machine Plus, plug it in, and kind of just get busy on it.
Sure. And that's like using that as like just a standalone, right? The Machine.
Yeah, Plus. I mean, I don't have, I guess, the software DAW of Machine, and I was fortunate that a friend of mine who used to work at Native Instruments put me on, and he got them to send me one. So the appealing thing about it for me was really that I could use it without connecting it to my computer. And with minimal effort, it's really easy to sample in and chop and do all kinds of things. And then after I finish with whatever I'm doing, if I so choose, I can dump it into FL Studio or into Audition or whatever, or into Strato Studio. That's another one that I use sometimes. Sure. Or I can just dump it into something else and add more to it.
Nice. And taking it back like just a little bit. So when you stopped rapping, when you started producing, who were like some of your biggest influences? What producers were you listening to at that time?
So at that time, when I was first getting into it, I mean, you could probably listen to some of my older stuff and catch the Dilla or the Madlib influence. But honestly,
Sure.
early on, it was mostly RZA. I mean, okay. I was really obsessed with just that classic '90s Wu-Tang sound, and just trying to flip soul samples, and I was trying to make my version of Cream right. all the time, and over time, I mean, if you listen to like my early beats, I'd say those were my biggest. That was my biggest influence. Okay. Him and like Alchemist. And then over time, when you sort of learn more techniques and I think my stuff started sounding a little more Detroit or Dilla or Black Milk, right. that type of sound. And then I think around 2010, 2011, I think around that time is when or maybe around 2008 is when I sort of discovered the the LA beat scene and the electronic influence of it all. And right. I mean, my sound has sort of morphed and evolved over time. I'd like to say now it's really kind of just a fusion of everything, but I think like most artists, I went through my set of phases.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And one thing I like to ask, actually probably mainly for me more than anyone else listening, like, right. Do you have any like favorite plugins or things that you use on pretty much everything? Are there like your go-to plugins that you need on all your tracks?
Yeah. There's a Rhodes plugin, and that's, full disclosure, that's like my favorite instrument, okay. Period. Like I love that that Fender Rhodes 73. So there is one that I use called Lounge Lizard.
I know Lounge.
Yeah, and that's great. And then there's a couple other Rhodes ones that I'd go through, and I know that there's better ones now, but I think that was the first one that I used that kind of sounded like a real Rhodes, and sure. And you'd be hard pressed to find many songs of mine that didn't incorporate it in some way, shape, or form. Right. I know the stock FL Studio plugins sort of get a bad rap, but there's a 3X oscillator that I used to use like crazy, and there's some cool pitch bending that you can do with it. Otherwise, I mean, Contact's fire, Reactor 6, I would use a lot. So I'd say those 3 or 4 are probably my favorites, but every so often, you come across something new, and I personally have a problem with restraint. So when I find a new plugin or a new sound that I really like I use the hell out of it, and I can't just I can't just like pace myself and use it a couple times here, maybe not use it for the next beat or two. No, it's like I gotta use the hell out of it until I'm sick of it.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same. I got sent a synth by Korg, and there's like one sound that I used consistently. I don't think I've used any other sounds on it, and it's just that sound over and over again. Right. But yeah, I need to get out of that habit.
It's hard until you make a beat and like there's a particular sound that you use and it sounds great, and then you realize, wait, this definitely sounds very similar to a beat I made 3 beats ago, and it's like I'd have to sort of force myself to use a different synth patch, if nothing else, just to try to space things out.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. I hear you. And when you're starting a track, how do you normally do it? Is it like a sample or drums, or is it something else?
So when I first started making beats, the philosophy for me was always to flip a sample or come up with a melody first, and then sort of work the drums. And over time, maybe over the last 6 or 7 years, I've sort of done it the other way around, where now I always sort of aim to do the drums or the percussion first, and for me, and every now and then I switch it up. But for me, I find that when I put the drums down first, it's easier for me to sort of realize the vision of the beat that I have in my head, and that I set the groove or the groove or the tempo or just the energy of the track, and then I find it easier to sort of work the melody in after the fact. Just doing it the other way around, I'd find a lot of times personally where, I find a great sample and I chop it up and so forth, and then I spend hours after the fact just cycling through drum patterns and kicks and snares, and I'm already like very indecisive as is, so it's hard for me to just commit to one thing. But depending on the feel, and sometimes you sort of hear that sample or you come up with that chord progression and you instantly just know exactly what to do with it. But it's just a number of times where, I don't really know where the beat's going when I start making. I just, cool, the sample sounds cool. Ooh, do I want to do some laid back vibey shit? Do I want to really smack motherfuckers in the back of the head with some heavy drums? Do I want to just not have drums at all? I ask myself these questions a lot, and naturally I'm a bit of an overthinker, as I think most producers are. So in an effort to not find myself working on the same beat 6-7 days after I start it, I find that I'm able to to be a little more concise and sort of get something in and then on to the next when I do the drums first.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Is that
and
well, I mean, I know you're interviewing me, but I'm curious what's your philosophy on it?
For me, it kind of changes up. I think normally it would be like I'd start with melodic stuff. So whether that's a sample or playing something in a guitar or keys, because I find it easier to then make the drums around that instead of having the drums set and then trying to fit something around it. I'm not sure why that is. I think maybe it's because I started off like playing guitar, so I kind of find it easier to write that part and then work it out from there. But it does completely change. Sometimes I'll be like, I'll find like a nice percussion loop or something, and then build the drums around that, and then it depends on the day really. But normally melodic stuff I'd say on my side. And then so moving on to your album, Rediscovery, which came out 2 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks today?
Yeah, November 3rd. So today, exactly 2 weeks today.
Yeah. And what I really loved about the album is you've got so many amazing collaborators on there, and there's also instrumentals as well. How do you decide which tracks you're going to get somebody on, like a vocalist or a rapper, and which tracks you just want to keep as instrumentals? Is that completely random, or is there a decision being made there?
Oh no, there's definitely a method to the madness. So I find that because the majority of my catalog is instrumental, and that's probably what I'm best known for. But I find that when I'm making a song that's intended for someone to rap or sing on, kind of the philosophy and sort of how I put the beat together changes a little bit. Because when you're working, and I mean, you know this, I know you have you've worked with a number of dope artists. You know, when you're working with another artist, you know, you tend to want to allow more space or be a little more minimal in some ways, since you know the vocals are effectively an instrument in and of itself. So the temptation to overproduce it and sprinkle in 20 different synths and add layer 8 different samples. You know, you don't have to do that, because sometimes when you do that, and you know, some elements of the song will be competing with whoever is rapping or singing on it. So, you know, when I signed on with Mellow Music to do this album, I mean, I knew that before I made anything, like I made a list of, you know, I had like 20 different artists that I wanted to work with, and before I produced a single one, you know, trying to narrow the list down was painful, and it sucked. But in my mind, when I picked these artists, I had an idea of the type of, you know, the type of song that I wanted them to rap or sing over. And, you know, being fans of all of them and listening to as much of their catalogs as I can, you kind of make notes of, you know, their strengths and, you know, what type of production will accentuate what they do best. Now, when I get into instrumental mode, and I knew beforehand I was going to have at least 3 or 4 instrumental songs on it, that's where I knew I can kind of just do whatever I want and, you know, layer it as much as I need to, and, you know, no concern over, you know, because sometimes in the past, it's like someone will hit me up asking for beats, and I'll send them a few of them, and they'll listen to it, and they'll come back like, yo, this is dope, but I don't think I can rap on it. Like I can't find my pocket, or there's a little too much going on. And, you know, and I used to kind of take some of that personally once upon a time. And then, but over time, you know, you kind of come to realize that, hey, you know what, they're right. You know,
sure.
Like there doesn't need to be 20 things happening in the beat, because then it's like, you know, you shouldn't even be trying to compete with them necessarily.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so when I do my next project, which will be the inverse, will be mostly instrumental, you know, I can kind of just get back to, you know, to, I guess, being as overproducing as I need to, but in general, even my philosophy for making music has changed a little bit, and, you know, the less is more as a philosophy is legit. And sometimes, you know, doing too much, you know, you can sort of brag to people that, yo, my session file has 48 channels in it, and it's like
why do you need that?
Who gives a shit? You know, like nobody listening cares how it's made. They just care if they enjoy it.
Sounds good.
So,
for sure. Yeah. And then, like the different tracks on here, or the different artists and stuff, did you make instrumentals specifically for them? Or did you have like a batch of stuff that you wanted to be able?
With every artist, you know, when I sort of penciled them in as far as who I wanted to work with, and then I sort of got to just making a bunch of beats, and in my mind, for every artist, I usually had 2, maybe 3 beats that I envisioned them over, and in the case of some artists, really just like 1. But, you know, the tricky thing with doing this type of curation album is that, you know, I've got it all sort of figured out, and, I have the record in my head as far as how I think it's going to sound and who's going to go on what, but then I have to convince the artist of that too. So, so I'll say, like, for instance, the Sky Zoo record that I did with Spirit of Richard Wright, and I think that's been kind of one of the most well-received songs on the album. But the original beat that I sent him, he wasn't really fucking with it. And I was kind of shocked by it. Like, man, like this, like, bro, like I listened to your catalog. Like, I think the shit would be perfect. Like, just give it a chance. And, it just, for whatever reason, it just didn't really move him. And so, okay, now I got to kind of scramble to find something else. Cause like I had that one song for him specifically. And I went into the vaults and I found a song that I was originally going to use on the album, and then I sort of nixed it at the 11th hour, and I just sent it to him anyway, and he loved it, and he was really excited to use that beat. So
nice.
And in hindsight, it was definitely the right decision to make. So sometimes doing those type of records, or just collaborations in general, I mean, being flexible and being able to sort of find that middle ground, because some other songs, it's like the one I did with Ivan Av, the beat that I sent him, which ended up being the If You Know, You Know. I don't think he was too crazy about it at first. And I gave him like another option as far as, which actually I think might have been the Tiger Cage one. And then I think he came back a few days later and he was like, "No, man, actually I listened to it a few more times, and this is the one." So I guess, I had a vision for everything, but you kind of have to, be prepared for the possibility that, they're just not crazy about it. And for me, the one thing that I feel very strongly about, I don't want to collaborate with anybody, or I don't want them rapping or singing or whatever on anything that I make if they're not 100% feeling it and all in.
Right.
Like I don't want to, I don't want to hear, I don't know, I don't want to hear Brittany Carter getting on a podcast later talking about, I didn't really like that beat that much, but I did it just to do him a favor. It's like, I made sure to double check with everyone, beforehand, like, this is the beat that I want you to rock on. Like, please just be honest with me. If you don't like it, if you're not fucking with it, we can make modifications. I can send you something else. Maybe the collaboration just doesn't happen at this particular time, but I don't want you to feel like you got bullied into it, or you did it just as a favor to me. Sure.
No, I hear you. And I always find it weird, like whenever I send stuff to artists, I'll send like maybe 3 or 4 options. They'll be like 3. I'm like, okay, they'll really like these, and 1 which is like a completely different to something they've done before. And then so many times it's just like they pick that one. You're like, what? Why have you picked this one? I didn't think you'd like it. But
it's also, I don't know. There's also maybe, I don't want to say like a reverse psychology to it, because I'm with you 100%. I mean, hell, even like my own projects and so forth, it's like the songs that I put on my records that I'm iffy on, or my 10th favorite song on the record, those are usually the ones that everybody loves the most, or those are the ones that everyone's like, send me this joint. But the ones that, have that personal attachment, or you really feel like you're in your bag, like, this is the best song I think I've ever made. and then you send it to a singer, and she's like, it's all right. You got anything else? So
yeah, that happens to me all the time. Always, like I put something out, I'm like, yeah, this is my favorite thing I've ever done, and people are like, that's all right, it's not as good as your other stuff. But
very rarely, and I can personally think of only a handful of times it's happened in my career where my personal favorite song on a record or something or a project that I do is everybody else's favorite.
Yeah.
95% of the time it's the one that I'm the most indifferent about. And
yeah.
I don't know. I think a lot of the times our personal favorite songs or beats that we make, now being that we made it, so, making music is really like putting a puzzle together. And so, when you feel like you cracked the code or you did something very technical or very unique, to someone who doesn't make music or doesn't make beats, they don't know of like that really subtle synth line that you tucked in underneath your bass line that, like you explain it to someone and you sound like a nerd talking about it, but you're really proud of that really subtle thing that you do, but it just doesn't necessarily translate.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, that is annoying though. That's annoying.
we all live the same life.
Yeah. And you were talking about the track with Ivan, If You Know, You Know.
Yep.
And I was listening to it again earlier. I usually I have a problem with listening to music in that I just listen to the beats and don't listen to the lyrics a lot. Yep. But I was listening to the lyrics there. Ivan is like one of my favorite rappers, and he was talking about his show in London and his show in Barcelona.
Yep.
Where there was only 30 people there, and I was one of those 30 people at that show actually. And I was like, oh wow, this is like, I've never heard it sounded like someone was talking about me in a song. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, so how, like, I noticed you guys have done quite a few songs together. How did that relationship start? How did you guys start making music together?
Yeah, so I was on SoundCloud one day, I guess at this point 7-8 years ago, and he did a song called Obedience, which was produced by Mind Design, and it's one thing when you hear a really, really dope song, but when you hear like an amazing song from someone you literally have never heard of before, and it kind of hits different. So, I think I was just doing I was doing something at the crib, and it came on the autoplay, and I kind of like stopped everything that I was doing. Like, yo, like, who the fuck is this? Like, dude kind of sounds a little bit like Below the Heavens Blue, but not quite. And the production, like that chord progression just like stuck with me for a while. And I think I found out later that Mind Design like replayed some soul sample, and kind of just I just went into this rabbit hole of this is really dope, I need to hear more, which led to like hearing the Low Jams album, and I find out that he's Norwegian and English isn't his first language, and I thought that was so crazy. And it's happened a few times where you hear somebody only once or twice, and I kind of just knew, just in my soul, like, yo, I gotta find out more about this guy. I have to work with him in some capacity, and I reached out, and he's a super cool, humble dude. That led to, we did a song in 2017, I think, called Oatmeal. And I felt like I was on 10, like, like when like when I find people that I believe in, like I really, really believe in folks. Now, luckily, I mean, he was already on an upward trajectory. You know, I mean, if Mind Design is producing your whole album, I mean, you obviously got to be somebody. And,
For sure.
and you know, and since that Oatmeal song, I mean, and he's done like 4 or 5 albums since then, and I always knew that I wanted to work with him again. But he and much props to him. He's a busy guy. So between his projects and what he's got going on in life, you know, I'd basically been, maybe the last 3 or 4 albums that I've done, I've hit him up at some point, like, hey, think you can drop a song on my record, and it was always kind of, you know, the timing wasn't right.
Right.
You know, he was just going on tour, XYZ, and to be honest, I didn't know if it was going to be in the cards to happen again, and but you know, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? So, you know, I tried again, and he was like, yeah, for sure. Let's get it. And
nice.
And the timing actually just worked out really well. Cause I mean, I knew that he was going on that tour. And so, you know, I was sort of preparing for the possibility that he might not be able to do it. And it just so happens that I guess he had some cool stories from said tour, and he mentioned it in the song. And you know, and I never ask any artists to rap about any specific topic. You know, I'm sure. Very much of a, hey, here's the beat that I think you would sound great on. Whatever the beat sort of sings to you, have at it. You know, like I trust everyone that I work with to, you know, to do something that I would fuck with. And you know, I didn't have to coach him up or anything like that. And it's fitting because you know, when he did an album called Helping Hands, I forget what year, but that's like legitimately one of my favorite albums of all time. And I bought the album, I had it on my phone, and the first time, or I think like the last time I went on tour in Europe, and so I had that record on loop, on repeat, train station. I'm listening to that record, and it really kind of just like spoke to me, you know.
Right.
And it's kind of just ironic that, you know, the last song that we did, he's kind of detailing stuff about his tour, a lot of the same things that I sort of felt. You know, when I went on mine, when I got hip to him, in terms of, you know, one night goes pretty crazy, another night there's 12 people there, but you know, but those 12 people are there for a reason, and they show out. Sure. And it has a lot of personal meaning for me.
Right. Yeah, no, I really love that song. Actually, you talking about touring in Europe, 2013, I think, or you played a show. I didn't get to go, but it was at one of my friends' nights in Brighton.
Yeah,
it's called Donuts. So Matt Tanner.
Shout out to Matt Tanner. Love that guy.
Yeah. How was that show? Was that a good show?
It was incredible. I mean, that was to this date, and so this would have been a good 10, 11 years later. That's one of probably like my top 5 favorite shows to date.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, I've played at bigger shows in terms of attendance and so forth, but that show was actually that was like my second international show ever, and the first one was a few nights prior in Glasgow. But it was crazy because, I mean, yeah, that was like my first, or my second. No, that was my first trip to Europe, in general. And, you know, the crowd was so live, and they treated me like it was the first time in my life, like as an artist, where like I felt like I was a big deal. I felt like I was important. And, you know, like I'd never really signed an autograph before until that night. Hell, I mean, you can ask Matt about it. I mean, like he DJ'd to close off the night, and, you know, the energy was just crazy there, and something just came over me, and I grabbed the mic, and I had to kick a few bars. I mean, I had to. I mean, I've never seen any footage of it, so hopefully it doesn't exist.
I'm gonna have to ask him, see if he can leak it.
But it was one of those. It was definitely one of those nights where like I came home, and, you know, like I did Paris and Berlin afterwards, and those were fun nights too, from a number of reasons. But I could have just gone home right after that Brighton show, and it's like, this trip is a success. Like I don't care about the money, or, you know, or whatever else. Like just that night was so much fun. Right. I don't know if he still does the donuts shows out there.
Yeah, still going every week.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, in a perfect world, I'd love to go back. Like, you know, I know a lot of things have changed over like the last 10 years in terms of the scene and like beat sets and so forth. But, you know, like Brighton is just such a cool town to begin with.
Yeah.
And you know, and that was just like my first real taste of life outside of North America. So
right.
Forever grateful to Matt for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad my hometown left that had that amazing experience for you.
Yeah, and that,
not that I'm taking any credit, but yeah.
And that little like arcade on the pier was pretty crazy.
Oh yeah,
he took me there too.
Oh, nice. Well, I'll speak to him. I'll see if I can twist his arm, see if he can get you back out again.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's you know, I'm hoping that next year. I mean, obviously, I was in London earlier this year, and saw you there. So I'm hoping next year I can go back again, and, you know, and if the opportunity to swing by Brighton exists, yeah, I'd love to go there. I mean, show or no show, I just thought it was a cool place to be.
For sure, yeah. And I'm kind of conscious of taking too much of your time. I had one more question to ask about like the album. So you had a track on there called Tuscany that I saw you talking about on social media. And obviously when I saw you were with Adia, and you'd just been at the Playground beat retreat. What was that experience like? How was that for you?
I mean, it was amazing. It was awesome to just be in Italy and just be in a cool place and just make beats and you know, just make so many friends. I mean, when I got there, Adia and Dash, shout out to Dash. Those are like, and Kayla Maestro. I think those are the only like 3 people. Maybe there was and Kayla Nels. Those are like the only people there that I'd like known and had like relationships with beforehand. And, you know, I'm a timid, introverted person. So, you know, like meeting new people is always a kind of a scary thing for me. And I explained it a little bit in the post, but, you know, just overthinking and the imposter syndrome was really, really like whooping my ass the whole week. And, you know, and I didn't know who was going to be there beforehand, but I mean, I knew that folks were, you know, like trained musicians and so forth. And, you know, like I make beats, but, you know, if you ask me to be in a studio session and play keys, like I'm I'm not nice enough on the keys like that, and I can't play guitar or bass or anything. I mean, I can program drums. So like I sort of, we're going to these sessions, and in my mind, I felt like, man, like folks kind of have to work around me, or I'm kind of holding the session back because, I feel like I'm limited in what I can contribute to it. But, everyone was super supportive and friendly, and and you talk to folks afterwards, and they're telling me much of the same thing, like, oh yeah, imposter syndrome, that shit's real. So I guess it was a little bit of a blessing and a curse in that I was sort of in my own head a lot, but
right.
But the sessions were great, and folks will hear the compilation that comes out, I think, next month or maybe January.
Nice.
But the songs that everyone were making were incredible, and it was a blessing and an honor to even just be invited into the mix. And you kind of just learn a lot about yourself, like I think I'm a good producer, like right. I feel like I'm good at what I do. I really thought that I was good at what I did until being around folks who are actually really good at what they do. So it was sort of you learn a lot. I mean, I learned a lot about, just myself and like the things that I can do and what I can improve on. Because when you're a quote unquote veteran, or you've been making music as long as I have, you sometimes convince yourself that you've got everything figured out, and there isn't much else to learn, and that's usually the moments when you really get humbled. So
right.
So yeah, but ultimately it's like I felt like I made a lot of new friends, and it's almost like a new sort of brotherhood or sisterhood, so to speak. And
sure.
And most of the folks there I didn't know. I'd never heard of them prior, and when I see that some of them got releases coming out, and I'm their biggest cheerleaders.
For sure.
Because ultimately, everyone came from different places to meet in one place, and everyone's story is a little different, but ultimately we're all kind of in the same boat in a way. So yeah, that song Tuscany, it was a song that I had started before that retreat, and I'm trying to remember what dumbass name that I had for it, but I mean, after that experience, because part of the philosophy of the album is, well, as it's called, Rediscovery. It's rediscovering why I got into music and the things that make me happy, and so forth. And I felt like just going on that trip in general was one of the things that made me remember why I started making music in the first place, and how fun it is. So it was a little bit of a tip of the cap to the Playground team and everyone I was there with. Nice.
And yeah, I guess we get, as producers, we get that a lot. We're so used to just sitting at home or wherever our studio is, in the studio, and making music on our own, not talking to anyone. And then when you go into that situation where you're around others, like you said, I'm the same as you. Like, I think my biggest strength is producing more than playing any instruments. I can play stuff, but having the DAW to play a chord and then play another chord, and then like if I played something wrong and do that, is the comfort blanket.
Well, it was crazy because it was like I said, I mean, much like you said, I'm a veteran producer through and through. I mean, it's how I learned. It's my haven. Like I call the crib the the Batcave. And really, for me, I haven't had a ton of experience in terms of being in like actual studio sessions with other folks. I mean, the ones I've done usually are with like rappers, so it's like, okay, they just go in the booth and they record, so
Sure.
nothing too crazy there. But you know, there's basically a guitar expert over here, and there's a bass player over here, and the homie Luke is ripping it on the flute like he's Andre 3000, and and you know, and everyone knows like music theory, and so they're talking about chords and F major and harmonic dissonance and all this shit's going like way over my head, and I'm kind of just in the room just trying to like not look like an idiot, and it's like and you know, but I mean, everybody, I think what really helped was that everyone there just didn't really have an ego to it, and they understood that they might be an expert. Like some folks there played like 4 or 5 different instruments, and then there's a few folks like me or like Kayla Maestro who like just don't play anything but just know how to program. And you know, everyone, and so everybody was able to contribute in a way that sort of made sense to them, and didn't, you know, like some of the songs that I was hearing, it was sort of hard to figure out who did what, which in my opinion is a sign of a great produced song.
For sure. And like one last question before.
Oh, by the way, I've got time, so don't feel like you got to rush through anything.
Yeah. No. I was just going to ask, like, you've mentioned like, so the Playground compilation's coming out. You said you've got another instrumental album kind of on the way. What can we kind of expect for the next 6 months or a year? Are those like the next 2 things kind of thing that are coming after the album, which is only just dropped?
Right. Well, as far as the next record with Mellow Music, I mean, I'm not finished with it or so forth, and
sure.
And just with the way of release schedules and so forth, likely no one's going to hear that until probably around this time next year, give or take. But otherwise, I mean, 2024 should be a pretty busy year. So you know, I did a song like for that upcoming compilation with the homie Joe Bay and the homegirl Molly McFall. So I'm excited for that to drop. There's a remix I did for the homie Somni Beats. That'll drop sometime next month. Some more stuff with Killer Tracks. And you know, it's interesting because like growing up as a kid, some like my favorite artist would drop an album and then you wouldn't hear them again, save for maybe a feature or two. You wouldn't hear the next project from them for 4 years or something like that.
Yeah. And
you know, with like Spotify and everything nowadays, you got more folks dropping like 5 projects per year, and I never thought I'd be that person, but then I turn around and realize I have like over 20 releases over the last 15 years. So clearly I'm one of those folks too. But I have plans. I have ideas of things that I want to do. I want to... Man, it's like if I put it out there, then I almost have to commit to it. But it's like I want to get into like Twitch or or something like that, where I can let folks in a little more in terms of like my process and so forth. Because I know some folks have been asking for it. I want to do I want to do some more like EPs, like maybe some like Bandcamp exclusives or things that I don't just like freak on the DSPs. Like I want to do some more remixes, and I have an EP series called Bedtime Stories. I kind of want to do part 4, part 5, part 6. You know, for me right now, it's like, oh, and there's definitely another project that I definitely can't like officially speak on. But it's a cool sequel to something I did in the past. But
nice.
But at this point, I'm really only looking to undertake things that are interesting or different. Like I want to do some more like themed projects where it's like, I don't know, maybe I do a tape full of just me flipping Brazilian samples, or maybe I want to do an Onra long distance type 80s inspired record, or maybe I want to be on some Madlib beat conductor 3/4 shit, or I just flip like Bollywood samples. You know, I think the idea of taking one particular sound and just doing a full project with it, I mean, it's not something I've ever really done before, but it sounds like it would be fun. And at this point in my life and career, you know, I kind of just want to do fun, interesting, different things. So
for sure,
I know I kind of said like 10 different things that I want to do, and obviously I'm not going to do 10 different things over the next 6 months, but certainly over the next year or two, at least a handful of those things I definitely want to get into.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the best way. You know, at the beginning of every year, I'll write down like 30 goals, knowing that I'll probably only do like 3 of them. As a way of, if I write down like 1, 2 things, that won't happen. So the more I have, then I'm definitely going to tick a few off, and then I'll be like, yeah, job done. I've done something there. But yeah, no, you sound like you're very busy.
It's in a way. I mean, you know, you can always make time for other things, and some of those projects I mentioned have been in the works for time. So it's just a matter of finishing touches and you know, finalizing a few things. But you know, it's you know, when you've had a career as long as mine, and it's one of the things I've kind of struggled with a lot, of, you know, finding, sort of setting goals of things that you want to do that you are emotionally invested in. Like I could write down that, hey, this is the year that I want to get a placement on a Drake record, or I want to win a Grammy, but honestly, deep down, it's not something I give a shit about doing. Like, if it happens, great, but it's not something that sort of pushes me. I mean, before, I had goals of, you know, I knew I wanted to tour through Europe, and it was something that, you know, like, consumed my thoughts until I was able to do it. And you know, playing in Japan was a big one for me too, which I'm fortunate that I was able to do it. And I knew that I wanted to do a record full of rappers on it, and I've done that twice. So, you know, finding things that, you know, that really get me excited and really drive me. I mean, it's been harder as the years go by, when it sort of feels like you've done everything you really, really wanted to do. But yeah, but I mean, there's a couple things that many of the things that I mentioned before that I definitely want to get back into.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, I don't want to take any more of your time. I appreciate you giving me, I said it was only going to be half an hour. It's been well over an hour now.
All good, brother. It's always,
thank you.
It's always fun, you know, when you're talking with homies, right?
Yeah. And thank you so much for agreeing to do it. And obviously, everybody go and check out your new album, Rediscovery. on streaming service everywhere. And it's also, you can get physical copy, right, on Bandcamp?
Yeah, on Bandcamp or the Mellow Music Group official website. So from what I understand, they should be ready to ship next month. So we've got the 180 gram black, and we also have a cool orange splatter colorway. So yeah, just support the kid. I mean, physical merch, that stuff. I mean, for me, growing up where I did, that always means more to me than streaming, although I definitely appreciate any and all streams. Just support independent music.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor, for real.